Hello and welcome to another video. So if you watched my last video, you'll know that this is another JCG deck. This was one of the top decks for the last JCG as I'm making this video, which wasn't that long ago, but this is of course Lion deck, straight up Lion deck. I did end up crafting a couple extra legendary fighters mainly just for this deck because it's such a good card and I really wanted to have fun with it. I still haven't managed to trigger its 10-10 effect basically once you add all that together, but I will definitely be trying to get that in a future video where I just try and go for that, I think, or maybe even a stream. I'll have to wait and see how my life goes and see how all that plays out. But this deck is still one of the top decks in the current meta easily. It's a very cheap deck. Of course, this variant isn't super cheap because I am running some of very good legendaries in it. Of course, triple Snow White, triple legendary fighter, and 2 Beacon of Salvation. But as far as legendary goes, that is reasonably cheap. You could quite easily swap out things like Beacon of Salvation for Thermos Purge, which will be a decent banish card. Along with, of course, Snow White could probably be swapped out for a different 2-drop, but one card I would definitely want to keep is probably Legendary Fighter, and I suppose that does go with Snow White quite nicely. So if you are going to try and build this deck, I recommend you at least try to keep those 2 cards together because they are just that good. Otherwise, this deck mainly relies on its Lion engine, so plenty of Lion support. Red Branch Knight, great card. I did take a little bit to get used to it. A few matches I used it properly, a couple of matches I didn't. That's just how the card went. There were a few times I wish I had have played it in preempt of something big and I just didn't, or I stuffed up playing the Sealed Tomb as Forbidden Teachings, which means I couldn't play Red Branch, which led to, of course, pretty terrible options. But Father of Punishment does fairly well, honestly. Didn't expect the card to be quite as good as it is. I mean, for a low cost, it was always going to be good, but it's just that extra bit. Of course, the triple Spheric Blade as well. This deck does deal very well with Tenko, although the only Tenko match I've had on ladder today, I actually lost mainly due to just not drawing my Lion engine early enough. Everything else was pretty decent. I could say I went about 50% of my matchups were wins pretty comfortably, and for this deck that's not too bad, especially with the amount of counter decks that are out there right now trying to deal with things like Temple Lion. So we're going to get right into the video and check it out. So the first matchup is against Forest, and from what I could tell it was an Aggro Forest deck, or maybe a mid-range. Most likely leaning toward Aggro though myself. Usually not too bad a matchup for this deck, as Forest doesn't deal well with consistent big bodies, so if you can just continually throw stuff out, then usually you're pretty right. Of course that does mean you need to secure the early game as quickly as possible. So, triple Peace Weaver and a Temple Holy Lion. This is one of the few matches where I didn't have to worry about getting my Lion engine out early, as I just had crap tons of it, so I could just play whatever I wanted, however I wanted, without any kind of concern. Magical Fairy Lilac, again, not really a problem. And the top deck Holy Lion Crystal, again, perfect. You couldn't ask for a much better turn. Being able to use both Holy Lion Crystals on turn 3 is usually ideal, especially since it does up your count by 2 very, very quickly. Of course, next turn's a little more awkward as I don't really have any way to use a Holy Lion Crystal, and fortunately that's not great for me. Luckily, Father of Punishment kind of makes up for it. It does let us deal with the Lilac pretty well. And we can remove another one of those 1/3s with it. Which is what you want to do. You want to limit Forest board as much as you can so they can't buff them up massively. So the more followers we can keep for cheap, the better. So even if they had a Brambles, probably wouldn't have been a problem. Now we do have a couple of Holy Lion Crystals. Fortunately, I don't need to use them all right now, as we can just continually pump them out. I did decide to take the Ward instead, and Cassiopeia unfortunately deals with this pretty well. Although it usually will clear out boards because it's Cassiopeia, it's just what it does. So I did get my Red Brand Knight there. Deciding when to use it is the more important part. Luckily, our Lions on turn 6 are already at 4/4s. With a nice little Evo, they deal with this pretty well. And we've still got a Peace Weaver and another Holy Lion Crystal, so we can pretty much abuse Holy Lion Crystals from now on. We've also got the Beacon of Salvation, which is going to be perfect for clearing out these low-cost wards. So they did get a fairly decent turn. Being able to deal with both my Lions as effectively as they did. But we are going to get to play our own Holy Lions, so why not? Probably could have went for the Holy Lion Crystal into the Mori. I did decide not to do that, but I mean, I had the option there. Didn't use the extra Evo though, even though we do have 2 more Father of Punishments in the deck. At this point I felt like it was definitely the better play. Try and limit the damage they could possibly do to me. Devil Flower, a little unfortunate. Definitely a good card though. I do recommend people run that if they're having trouble with amulet based decks like Temple Lion or Tenko. Really great card for that kind of counter. It's very low cost and very easy to use. So there's another Father of Punishment. At this point, don't really need it. Mainly we just want to pump these lions out as quickly as we can and get that damage to the face. Which is why we didn't really worry about dealing with the board. Wood of Brambles though does come in. So it is getting a chance, and Gringling Axeman, definitely not the card I wanted to see. Its rush effect is the more frustrating part of that, as otherwise I wouldn't have had much trouble. Although they probably could have done this a little better. I personally probably would have used the 2-1, weakened 1-3, kept my Axeman at max, but it's just me. So I went for one of the Holy Lion Crystals first, then the Black Inscription play into the Mori. I wanted to at least hold on to the Holy Lion Crystal as I wanted to be able to take advantage of it to its full effect. Fortunately that didn't end up being necessary as they did end up conceding, but you can definitely see how the crystals work very well. The next matchup is against Dragon, and this one is usually a matchup I don't do too well in, but if you can get some quick lions out like this matchup, you will do pretty well. So again, starting out very well with a Temple Lion and a Peace Weaver. That's kind of the key cards that I like to aim for most of the time. I did end up holding onto the Spheric Blade as well, as I do find that's quite a nice card to hold on to as well. And we also got our Red Branch Knight, which again is great. We also have another Holy Lion Crystal, so you can't go wrong with 2 Holy Lions on 3. Most of the games I win, typically I win with that strategy. Temple into double crystal is just too good. There's also a really nice way you can go for Temple Crystal Temple, which is also not bad, as it does set up your board nicely. Which is what I probably could have went for here, but I did just decide to go for the Lions as I didn't really feel the need to use a second Temple there. So we're going to get a chance to play out another Temple. Go for another Holy Lion Crystal as we do have Peace Weaver. And really just drop a Snow White. So a quick Evo on the 2-2. Start going for that early damage. Really want to rush Dragon players down as they will overwhelm you in the late game and be able to block out a lot of your potential damage. So definitely the way to do things. They do go for the Dragon's Nest there with that play, which is not bad for me. The Spheric Blade actually cleans up Dragon's Nest nicely, as Dragon's Nest isn't a last word effect, meaning it is pretty easy to remove without them getting it off. And Snow White actually getting its value here. So we can hold on to our Lion Crystal, which is good. We can deal with it, and we can actually go for another 4 damage. Putting them right in our Holy Lion range. As once we had 1 Holy Lion Crystal, it would be very easy, so luckily that did end up in the concede anyway, but we would have had a pretty nice game going forward. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you are looking for a reasonable deck on the cheap, I guess, this is one for you. Like I said, you can very easily swap out some of these legendaries for other cards that have similar effects. You can easily swap out something like Legendary Fighter for Lauren, Snow White for another 2-drop that fits the same sort of use case where you can just take full advantage of its stats. And of course Salvation is very easy to swap out for the current Thamai's Purge, which is a great card. So if you do want to try this deck, I would definitely recommend checking that out. Otherwise, this is very good on ladder. Give it a go. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video, hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.